Blog Talk Radio.
Is Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, folks, and you know what that means. It is House Talk Pregame, family, and I am your empowerment coach and inspirational speaker, Dr. Lauren Pitts. I am so excited to have two of my three co-hosts with me on Pregame this morning. Former Scholar athletes Jared Johnston, Bowie State in the house, and Ronnie Ransom, Virginia State in the house. And my man-child extraordinaire, Andre Garlick from Drexel University. He will be joining us later on in the season, folks, so you will have an opportunity to have Andre add to these powerful discussions we're going to be having all season and all year long. Let me just tell you, House Talk Pregame is all about family and showing much love. When I say much love, I mean much love to our HBCU family, student and professional athletes, and their families. Speaking of family, our House Talk Pregame family has grown, and we are now a part of the Heritage Sports Radio Network family, and you'll be able to check us out on HSRN real soon. So we'll share that information with you as soon as we have the specific days and times that you'll be able to tune in on HSRN as well. So we want to give them a shout out and show our love to them as well. It's up to you, Jared.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everybody, again, for the second week of the House Talk Pregame. And like Dr. Pitt said, a lot of you guys may have been familiar with House Talk, but now we're coming at you guys from a whole different angle, on a whole new level, dealing with the raw times that we're currently living in. Every single week, we're going to get down and dirty, and we're going to give you guys some real knowledge, make some new discoveries, share our truth as people, be as transparent as we possibly can to help you guys. And then we know you guys care. We know that you're tired, the things that are going on a weekly basis, a daily basis. But we're here to give answers for you, and we're here to optimize so we all can be successful, in these trying times, and give you guys a break, away from your everyday life, and hope that we can pour into you guys and, give some value. Take it over, Ronnie. You got it.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jared and Dr. Pitts. Most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, we want to hear from our HBCU fans and family, current and former student athletes. So during the show, we will be taking call-in questions and comments by simply dialing direct at 515-605-9744 or email your HBCU shout-outs, questions, or comments to htpregame@gmail.com. Back to you, Dr. Pitts.
Indeed. So one of the things that we decided that we're going to do every week is we're going to give you a diagnosis of the week, because one of the things that we are intimately acquainted with, first and foremost, is that mental illness is a major, major stigma in the African American community. And then when we dig a little deeper, because the three of us, or actually the four of us, Andre included, we are very, very big on research, and we're very big on looking at our business to find out what's going on with our people, particularly our scholar athletes and our professional athletes and their families. So what we want to do every week is we want to give you a diagnosis of the week. So we are going to give you some pertinent information about mental illness and some warning signs that you need to be looking for, as well as some treatment and some resources and coping skills and things like that. So this week, we're actually taking a look at major depressive disorder. And this is what we want you to know about major depressive disorder. It's a common and very, very serious mood disorder. And those who suffer from depression experience persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness, and often find yourself losing interest in activities that they really once found enjoyment in, i.e. your sports and maybe activities with family and what have you. And aside from the emotional problems caused by depression, individuals can also present with physical symptoms such as chronic pain or digestive issues. And here's what we want you to know. To be diagnosed with depression, symptoms must be present for at least 2 weeks. So we already know that this national listening audience that we have tuning in to House Talk pregame and tuning in to Heritage Sports Radio Network, we already know that this is something that many of you are either suffering with yourself or your family member, friend, or loved one. So I'm going to give you some specifics that we want you to look for, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ronnie, and he's going to share with you some coping skills, and we'll sort of tag team on the resources that'll be available to you, and we'll move on. So depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day. Like you just not feeling it at all. You're not maybe wanting to get out of bed. You don't feel like being bothered, but you might just be saying, you know what, y'all, I'm just not feeling this today. Signs of markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day. Significant weight loss when not dieting, or significant weight gain, or decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day. A slowing down of thought and a reduction of physical movement, observable by others, y'all, observable by others, not merely subjective feelings of restlessness or being slowed down. Fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. Diminished ability to think or concentrate, or some serious indecisiveness nearly every day. So those are just a few of the symptoms. There are others. I'm going to give it to Ronnie, and he's going to share with you some things that you can do to address it. And then, like I said, we'll tag team on some resources that you can use if these symptoms that I've described sound like you or sound like somebody that you love and care about. Ronnie?
Thank you, Dr. Pitts. Couple other things I wanted to reel off about depression, and this might be if you're a student athlete, current or former student athlete, if you've experienced any of these symptoms related to depression, definitely seek out professional help. Some of the symptoms that student athletes might face are low frustration tolerance, so being easily frustrated or losing their cool, isolating themselves from teammates. So if you've gone through injury or you've lost your starting position due to injury or lack of performance, you might start to isolate yourself from teammates. A lack of enjoyment for the game or sport or whatever you're playing. So if you're starting to lose interest or enjoyment in the sport, that can be a sign of depression. And another thing I wanted to point out for males, if you're a male and you feel like you might be experiencing some form of the depression, some of the symptoms could be presenting anger and excessive alcohol abuse. So if you're feeling upset or you're feeling, down and out of it, sometimes, males will, drink alcohol to try and drown out those feelings, drown out our sorrows and things like that. So some coping skills for depression. So number one, first and foremost, definitely want to socialize, building a support system. Typically people who deal with depression, they tend to isolate themselves, distance themselves from everybody because they don't want to be seen as a burden or they don't want to dump their problems onto somebody else. And oftentimes that's not the case. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling out of it, have that support system, have friends that you can talk to, family members that you can talk to so you don't feel alone. Exercising is also a very good routine that you can do to help battle depression. When you exercise, your brain releases chemicals called endorphins. Endorphins are released out of the brain to help reduce stress and pain. So you don't have to do, if you're a student athlete or former student athlete, when I say exercise, I'm not saying, go do a routine that you would do with your strength and conditioning coach. A simple 15 to 30-minute exercise routine, whether that's yoga, a HIIT workout, cardio, any of those things would definitely be good. Eating healthier. Don't skip meals. Oftentimes, those who are experiencing depression, they'll either skip meals or they'll eat way too much. So, make sure you don't skip meals and make sure you're eating a balanced meal. Eliminate processed sugars and aim for natural sugars such as what you will find in fruit. Inflammation and processed sugars, caffeine, alcohol, and things like that affects our ability to maintain mood stability. So, if you're eating junk food or, food that's high in, saturated fats or that don't have natural, ingredients, try and eliminate those in your diet as best as possible. Limit your alcohol and other drugs. Like I said, alcohol is naturally a depressant. So if you drink alcohol and you're already feeling depressed or out of it, it's going to be intensified. For those of you who use marijuana or any other type of drugs to try to mask your depression, that won't help either. Learning your triggers for depression. So, anything can trigger your depression, and sometimes depression can come out of nowhere. So if you've been through abuse, whether it's physical, mental, sexual abuse, understand that. Any type of conflict, if you're somebody who doesn't like conflict, doesn't like arguing or disagreeing with people, understand that can be a trigger. Death or loss of a loved one, and also life changes such as, moving. If you're a younger child and you've moved, or you're a young student athlete and you had to move or transfer, or if you lose your job, that can also be a trigger. Finding a hobby, having something to do that you enjoy to keep your mind off of the depressive thoughts is also very good. Getting enough sleep. Sleep deprivation can definitely affect your mood. It can make you more irritable, make you angry, and also you'll be tired. So if you're feeling symptoms of fatigue or loss of energy, getting a good night's sleep is very important. Journaling, like I said last week, journaling is a very good way to get those thoughts out of your mind and put it on paper. One thing I like to tell some of the clients I work with is if you do choose to journal, when you write those thoughts on your paper, try to leave those thoughts on that piece of paper and don't let them creep back into your mind. Almost like when you close the book, that closes that thought right there so it doesn't come back into your mind. And last but not least, therapy. Finding a therapist that you can talk to and have somebody else in your corner to build your support system. And a good resource for those of you who are looking for a therapist or looking for outpatient therapy, psychologytoday.com is a very great resource, a very good website where you can find therapists or psychiatrists in your area. They have different filters, so if you're looking for a male or female, whether it be white, African American, whatever the case may be, they have all those filters on there so you can find somebody who you feel comfortable with. And one quick thing about that, sometimes it might take a while to find a good therapist. Sometimes you might not, the first therapist you go see, that might not be the best fit. Don't get frustrated and don't give up on seeking therapy. You will find that right fit. It might take some time. It might take you going through maybe 1 or 2 or 3 therapists till you find that right fit for you. So if you feel like you're experiencing any of these symptoms or anything like that, please reach out for professional help.
Yeah. I want to add to that, and then I'll give a couple of more resources, then we'll turn it back over to Jared. When you're dealing with depression and those depressive symptoms are becoming more prevalent in your life, a lot of times we do find that there are thoughts of self-harm and suicidal inclinations that don't arise from non-depressive sadness. And those struggling with severe depression may have those thoughts of self-harm, death, or suicide, or even have a suicide plan. And while we're there, anybody that knows me intimately knows that I absolutely, positively love my Dallas Cowboys. And my heart just broke on Thursday when Dak did his interview and it was finally, made public knowledge that his brother Jace had, in fact, committed suicide. So I want to take a moment to just, share my condolences and my heartfelt sympathy for the Prescott family at the loss of their brother, their son, their friend. In the Pitts family, we have dealt with suicide, and it leaves you reeling for a very, very, very long time. And I would suffice to say that it's something that you don't get over very quickly. And Dak alluded to that, in his interview, that it took him some time. It took him reaching out and being deliberate and intentional to talk openly and honestly with family members and with friends and with those that he knew that he could confide in. And it takes such a tremendous amount of courage to do that. No gender bias here, but I know from raising a son and from having, all of the men in my life, family members and friends and colleagues, that it's hard sometimes for you guys as men to share that level of vulnerability. But we need you to do that. We need you to know that you are not alone, that we love you, that we care for you, and you never, ever, ever have to suffer in silence. Anytime I hear anything about somebody committing suicide, whether it's somebody obviously that's intimately connected to me or somebody that I don't know, my heart literally shatters because it is a permanent solution for temporary problems. So if any of our listening audience today are feeling suicidal or just need to talk, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline for free at 1 800 273 8255. Again, that's 1 800 273 8255. And if you think that someone that you care about may be suffering from depression, or even if you're suffering from depression or think that you might be, we encourage you to seek help, as Ronnie said, from a mental health professional. In addition to Psychology Today, you also have psychcentral.com. That's PSYCH central.com/find-help. You also have the Psychology Today, goodtherapy.org. But again, if you are thinking about committing suicide or worried about someone else, or if you just need the emotional support, the Emergency Lifeline Network is available 24/7, listeners. Call it at 1 800 273 8255. Jared, let's get it started.
Yes, again, great information. Every time y'all do it, I feel like I'm in a therapy session, so I just sit and I'm just taking in all the information. So definitely, if you guys out there listening, I'll just add to it. That is a real issue, and like they said, get help if you can. Don't be ashamed. That's the main thing. Don't be ashamed. People are there, to help you. But to get the show started, we always want to kick off exposing and giving exposure towards HBCUs in the country. I attended Bowie State University. As some of you listened last time, maybe you know, and as Dr. Pitts said. But even with me living 45 minutes from Bowie State University my whole life, not once did I hear about Bowie State until I was in the jam and I needed to leave my junior college, and they came along and offered me. So that just goes to show that us as African Americans, we are not as aware of all of the HBCUs and what they have to offer as we would believe. So we want to shed some light on those. The first one I'm going to shout out is Wiley College. Now, Wiley College is in Marshall, Texas. It was founded in 1873, and the notable alumni from Wiley College. Well, before I get to the alumni, a lot of you guys may have watched The Great Debaters a couple of years ago, and this school, Wiley College, is actually what the movie is based off of. The debate team that was there, a movie with Denzel Washington. It was a great movie. So that's what they're pretty much known for. They got a lot of exposure after that came out. Another college is Miles College. Now, Miles College was founded in 1898, and it is located in Fairfield, Alabama. Some notable alumni from Miles College is Richard Arrington Jr. He is the first African-American mayor of the city of Birmingham. And then you have Autherine Lucy. She was the first African-American to attend the University of Alabama. So, HBCUs, there's always great people coming from HBCUs, and that's just more proof right there. The last one I'm going to call out, a lot of you guys may be familiar with it, Alcorn State University. Now, Alcorn State University was founded in 1871, and it was actually the first land-grant college established in the United States, the first black land-grant college established in the United States. They do participate in Division I as far as sports. Great facilities, great campus from what I've heard. I've heard nothing but great things about them. We'll go over to Ronnie. shout out some HBCUs, show them some love.
All right, thank you, Jared. So the 3 HBCUs I want to shout out this week. The first one is Talladega College, located in Talladega, Alabama. They were founded in 1867. They are Alabama's oldest private black liberal arts college. One of the notable alumni is William Harvey, who is the current president of Hampton University. So shout out to Talladega College. The next university I want to shout out is Florida Memorial University, located in Miami Gardens, Florida. Florida Memorial University was founded in 1879. A notable African-American that taught there was Zora Neale Hurston, who was an author and filmmaker. And a special shout-out to Barrington Irving, who was the youngest and first African-American to fly solo around the world in 2007. Shout out to Florida Memorial. And the last college I want to shout out is Kentucky State University. They are located in Frankfort, Kentucky. They were founded in 1886. And one of their notable alumni is Tom Colbert, who was the first African-American to serve on the Oklahoma Supreme Court. So shout out to Kentucky State University. I'll pass it over to Dr. Pitts now for her shout-outs.
Look, I'm gonna go ahead and go to my timeout for a radio show host because I did not do my research on the notable alum or the founding dates, but I'll do better next week. I promise, listeners. I promise. Dr. Fitz will do better. But still, with that though, I still want to show some love to Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Prairie View A&M in Prairie View, Texas, and UMES, that's University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, in Princess Anne, Maryland. And I'll shout out their notable alum and a little bit of their history next week again before I go on to my other shout-outs. Jared, on you, baby.
Yes. Thank you guys for all these shout-outs. So today, every week we're focused on, pouring into the individuals that are listening. Since it's football season, we know a lot of people are missing football, whether it's college, high school, Pop Warner, the NFL. So what we're doing, creative way, we're going to bring the football season to you guys every week, every Saturday, like it's college football. And what we do is we're basing these conversations off of a book that I self-published from Cleats to Loafers, and it discusses the transition phase for athletes. As they detach from the sport and how it comes with a lot of struggles mentally and socially that a lot of athletes do not. Our guardians, our parents, our coaches may be unaware that we're going through these things. And it sheds light on that journey. What goes through our mind as we detach from the sport? How do we feel emotionally? Do we go through thoughts of suicide? Do we go through thoughts of feeling less valuable to the world, that we have nothing to offer? So we're breaking all of these down, and we're going to give it to you guys raw, be as transparent as we can, as we said earlier, sharing our stories. So today the topic is going to be identity theft. Now, a lot of you guys may have heard of identity theft when you look at credit and people's profiles being stolen and things like that. The simple definition of identity is the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. So how we can relate that to football and what's going on in the world today. There's a lot of young athletes, male, female, whatever gender you are, whatever sexuality you claim. Right now, with what's going on with the coronavirus, there's a lot of people who are struggling with their identity because right now we have been detached from the sport of football or from whichever sport you play, and you're having to look yourself in the mirror and really have to dig deep and find out, okay, who am I as a person? In a story that I want to share with you guys, and I talk about this in the book, a 5-star athlete coming out of high school in 2010. His name was LaTuan Anderson. He came from Cleveland, Ohio, a rough area. Didn't come from the best background as far as family, but the thing that he had and the thing that he confided in for the majority of his life was football. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. And the thing about his story is, and what amazes me, is that he was a star, 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He was number 1 in his state, number 15, nationally ranked in the country. And his college coach had told him, had told the reporters when he had gotten some trouble that he didn't have enough time with him. He told him that his parents and everyone around him they put football first. So football became his identity by nature. And once he was detached from the sport, unfortunately, he came across a lot of trouble, which landed him with a 7-year prison sentence for a string of armed robberies. The last one ending where he pulled a gun on a gas station clerk and ended up in jail for 7 years. He gets out when he's 32. All of this came from the root of him being detached from the sport of football and not knowing what his identity is and focusing his identity on the sport of football from his younger ages up until his early 20s. And another thing that goes with that situation was the pressure of him having a child and not knowing what to do and not knowing how to provide. And he said that, once he stopped playing football, he felt he didn't have a purpose because everyone looked at him as just somebody who can run routes, catch touchdowns on Saturday. So that's what he struggled with internally. And a lot of times our athletes struggle with that eternally. And like Dr. Pitts and Ronnie said earlier, you don't open up and talk and seek help. And that is one of the things that really led him down a road of destruction. And that's why we're here today to talk about identity theft, because we don't want our young athletes to end up in that same situation. There are ways that we can prevent it, and we're here to share a lot of tips today and just provide value to you guys overall.
Yeah. I wanted to chime in on that because as you were talking, Jared, I was thinking about, and I think I touched on last week, I love to watch A Football Life and, all things. And I love all sports, but definitely football is near and dear to my heart. And how oftentimes, even with professional athletes, we hear frequently, right, that they finish playing football and then they experience this downward spiral and they've committed suicide. I know we touched briefly on Aaron Hernandez last week, and, it's just tragic. It's tragic that this sport that you all love so much, regardless of your gender, whatever the sport is, it's football season, but whatever the sport is, that when it comes time to separate from the sport, folk, are looking in the mirror and they're looking at a stranger. Who am I? What do I do now? And I think that's why it's so very important that we have these discussions and we provide the resources and the tools and the strategies that our student athletes and our professional athletes can utilize so that they're not just in this abyss of darkness after the athletic career concludes. Because whether you go pro or not, you're not going to play sports forever. And we need to make sure that the authentic you is still standing strong at the end of your athletic career. Because in the grand scheme of things, guess what? There's still work to be done, right? You still have generations of student athletes that come after you that could glean from your wisdom and your expertise and your life's lessons. And we need you here of sound mind to be able to share that information with the student athletes, with our listening audience, because we evolve as people, and this information will always, always be pertinent information.
Definitely. Now, while we're on this topic of the identity and the detachment from the sport, I know, Ronnie, you played ball as well at Virginia State. Can you talk about if you had any situations where you put your identity in the sport, and was there any reason why you did that? Like, why did you only look at yourself as a football player, if you have? If not, have you came across any teammates who have, thought that all they were was football?
Yeah, thank you, Jared. Yeah, for me personally, my entire being was wrapped into football. Like I said last week, I played football from the age of 8 until I was 22. And during that 14-year period, that was who I was. If anybody asks, well, who's Ronnie? He's a football player. Even if you ask me to describe myself, I'm a football player. First and foremost, I'm a football player. And, my self-esteem, my confidence, everything about my being was wrapped in the football. Part of the reason was, in my mind, I felt like, I always felt like I wasn't good at a lot of things, but I was great at football, from an early age, from my first year playing, I wasn't the best on the team, but from my second year on, I knew I had a special talent and I knew I could be good at it. And I consumed myself in the football. I started working out at an early age. I dedicated myself to football. I made sure I had the right grades, worked out, did everything I was supposed to do. That was my being. I remember when I was in high school, teachers would get, upset with me because if we had an essay or a writing assignment to do, I always found a way to tie football into it because I knew football. I could write about football, talk about football, eat, sleep, drink, everything was football. And while you all were talking, I found this article online that talks about having a performance-based athletic identity. And I want to read off some of these statements to our listeners. And like I said, if you're a current or former student athlete and you also had where your self-esteem and your confidence was solely tied into your sport, I want to read off some of these statements, and I want to see if you agree with any of them. First one is, my importance increases as my accomplishments increase. I feel good about myself because I am a good athlete. Sport is the most important part of my life. I am important because I am a good athlete. I feel bad about myself when I do poorly in my sport. I identify as a winner or a loser. Being an athlete is who I am. If I can't compete in my sport, how will I be me? And when I first read this, I identified with every single statement that was listed. My mood was based off how we did in football. When I first got to Virginia State, and I kind of touched on this last week, I had suffered an injury my freshman year. And so, off jump, starting my college football career, I was upset. I was sad. I was even, had, bouts of depression because I couldn't do football. Transition to college is a big transition for anybody, whether you're a student athlete or just a regular student, and my whole being was, I'm the student athlete, I'm a freshman, I want to make a great impression, and now I can't do that, so off jump, I was already affected by that. If we won, that was the best high you could ever feel was when you won a game. When we lost, dang, I did bad, I missed that block, I had a bad snap, part of this is my fault, I would just get down on myself. And even, the last one, being an athlete is who I am. If I can't compete in sport, how will I be me? That last one, spoke to me greatly. When I finished playing football, I literally lost my identity. I had to tackle for the first time in my life, well, who am I? And, as crazy as that sounds, asking yourself that question, well, who am I? I didn't know. Like I said, for 14 years, my entire being and identity was tied into playing football. I knew football. If all else fails, when I stepped onto that field, I was me. I was Ronnie. I was the athlete, the football player. That's who I was, and that was taken from me. I couldn't play anymore. My college career was over. There was absolutely no shot of the league anymore or any league at that point because of, having injuries. So, I really wrestled with that identity crisis for, a good 2 years after playing. And I did have some teammates, a lot of, oftentimes in the African-American community, these type of topics, are very sensitive and, kind of things we just kind of put on, in hush mode. And, talking about what Dr. Pitts was saying earlier with Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys, that was huge of him to come out and say how he, dealt with depression and anxiety and things like that. For me, I was always under the mindset, you can't go around and say, you're depressed or you're feeling down, especially, having that machismo or being a man and things like that. You don't want to tell other men that you're feeling like that. So, I didn't really talk with a lot of my teammates about how I was feeling or, my friends or family for that matter. That was a very hard topic. So I kind of kept it to myself and isolated myself from a lot of my friends and family, from having those conversations and trying to find my identity. when I first finished playing football.
So I have a question for each of you, and then I want to go to a break real quick, and then we'll come back and have you answer. As I listen to you each talking, I wonder when this consumption, if you will, happened. Like, Ronnie, you said you started playing sports, that you started playing football at 8 years of age. Jared, I don't remember how old you were when you said you started playing, but I want you, when we come back from the break, I want you each to speak to that, because I think that as we talk about identity, to me, when I look at it clinically, it seems like there's an underlying reason why somebody would become so consumed with that one thing at such a young age that translates into who am I at 30, 32, 33, or however old the athlete may be when everything finally concludes. But before you all answer, I want to say this, to our listening audience. We absolutely positively know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you all care about these discussions. And we know it because we're diehard about our sports, right? We're diehard about our HBCU sports. We're diehard about sports, period, in this country. And we know, as you have heard these gentlemen, just be totally transparent and vulnerable and share some of their journey, and thinking about you all that are listening in that are professional athletes or student athletes or family members, friends, loved ones, mates, whatever the case may be. So we want you to join these conversations. We want to hear from you. So call us live during the show, 515-605-9744. Again, that's 515-605-9744. Or you can email us at htpregame@gmail.com. But here's the other thing we want you to do. We want you to also download the HSRN app so you can listen anywhere by visiting the App Store or Google Play. Search Heritage Sports Radio and then just hit the download button. You can also help us keep these conversations growing by your sponsorship with a gift in whatever amount you can afford by visiting drlaurendpitts.com and clicking on the donate button. Or you can email us at htpregame@gmail.com to receive a sponsorship packet. So, gentlemen, tell our listeners about that. Like, when did it dawn on you that, like, wait a minute, I'm living, breathing, and dying football here. I'm not Ronnie. I'm not Jared. I'm a football player, and now what? How does that happen?
Right. In my situation, I started playing when I was 7, and I know my mother didn't put my brother and I in football for it to, intentionally be our purpose or for us to want to go hard at the game or have dreams of making it to the NFL. It was more so just, leisure time, do something positive. But when I was 12 years old, to answer your question, that's the exact moment when I realized to be great at the game, I had to put forth a tremendous amount of effort. And there's nothing wrong with putting forth the 110% effort to achieve your goals, because that's what you should do in any realm of life. But the thing is, if you get consumed by it and you don't have others around you to prevent you from being consumed by it, especially at a young age, that's where it can deter you. And for me, all through middle school, I was bullied. So like Ronnie had talked about when he read that article, you feel you have more confidence walking around school because you play football. Before I started playing football with the coach who told me to work as hard as I can to make it, things like that, I would go to school fearful. Like, I would go to school and not want to talk to anybody. I would go to school feeling like I didn't have any friends. Like, I would literally dread going to school. And as we're talking about the coronavirus and things going on right now and how a lot of kids are being impacted because they're not in school, we also have to look at the fact that there's kids that are being bullied, and this is a time that they do not want to end because they don't want to go back in those school hallways because it can be very, harmful for our kids mentally. So that played on me mentally. But once I got in football and I started to compete against the kids that were bullying me, and I started to notice that I was better than them, and that equaled the playing field. So when I go to school the next day, I can walk with my head up a little higher, my chest out. And then as I started going to Florida for Pop Warner championships and winning, we went to 3 straight, and I was a quarterback. So with that happening, that gave me confidence like that I've never had before. And it just felt amazing to be able to prevent some of the bullying because of football. So that's why my identity started to form through football, and it was a sense of protection for myself as well. And I think that as a kid, you want to be protected. You want to feel protected by your parents, your older brother, your older sister, whatever it is. And football was that protection from me, from the whole world. So for me to detach from the sport, knowing that football brought me my friends, football brought me most of my successes that I had up until the age of 23, it was very hard to cope with because now you're trying to realize, where am I going to get this fulfillment from now? Because this was my fulfillment, since the age of 7, but really since the age of 12 when I really found out, this is what I want to do. This is who I think I am. And it took away from the negative attention towards me. So that's why I feel I was consumed with the sport. And I didn't realize it until I took time to reflect and write about it.
Wow. Thank you for that, Jared. Wow. And just before you jump in, Jared, as you were sharing what was coming to mind, I just kept hearing balance, how there has to be a balance. And in that balance, all the schools nowadays have bullying campaigns and what have you, but what I can tell you is, kids are still being bullied, right? So there has to be a greater level of diligence on the part of the school districts. I get really, really angry when I hear people say, oh, man up, or oh, woman up. You shouldn't. It is so socially unacceptable to me that kids should have to go to school and fight. As someone that I fought because I too was bullied, and it's like, you know what, y'all not gonna keep doing this to me. So I learned how to knuckle up. It's like, you know what, I might not be the best brawler around, but I'm gonna get you up off of me. But the mere fact I had to fight to defend myself is so socially unacceptable to me. It's not even funny. And I think that not only is it socially unacceptable, but what's more disheartening to me is that as a people, we know within our communities, particularly within our inner city communities, it might not necessarily be the case in the more affluent communities, but certainly in the more impoverished areas, there's no such thing as fight or flight. It's fight. And you better not come home having taken a butt whooping. Fight. Get them up off you. Well, forgive me, folks, and it is certainly not my intention to offend anyone, but Dr. Pitt's going to tell it the way I feel it. Isn't that some residual effects of slavery there? If the end game is always to beat. I got to beat to get respect. I got to beat. Well, what is that teaching? Isn't that breeding more violence? Isn't that breeding more discontent? Isn't that sending a message to our young people that they still have to fight for their lives every day? It's unacceptable. And as a people, we need to do better. This is what I'm going to say, and then, Ronnie, I want you to go ahead and chime in. With the condition of unrest and injustice and inequality that we are facing as a people all over this nation right now, because the dominant culture has open hunting season on people of color, why are we killing and beating each other? Why? It's unacceptable. And it's ingrained in our culture. I believe, and I will believe and maintain until the day I die, that it is a residual effect of slavery, and it needs to be addressed. we have to take care of each other. We have to love each other. We have to do a better job of keeping each other safe. Ronnie, go ahead.
Very powerful points, Dr. Pitts. And Jared, thank you for definitely sharing your story. My story is kind of very similar to that. For me, you know, my, I guess, quote-unquote obsession and deep diving into, you know, football was wrapped around bullying as well. You know, when I was in elementary school and even all throughout school, I was always, you know, if not the biggest kid, the second or third biggest kid in school. So when I started playing football in third grade, that was kind of, you know, I wanted to play football because, you know, everybody else was playing it and things like that. But also, you know, a lot of, you know, my quote-unquote friends back in elementary school, they were bullying me. You know, they were, you know, I was called every fat joke you can think of, you know, the whole 9 yards. And one of the things I realized when I first started playing football is that, oh, these kids that are smaller than me and, you know, talking all this trash and calling me all these names, I can physically beat them up on the football field and not get in trouble. You know, I was, I guess you can say a big teddy bear when I was in school. You know, I didn't, you know, I wasn't trying to get in trouble in school and, you know, all that type of stuff or, you know, get into confrontations and things like that. I handled all that on the football field. So for me, that's kind of where my self-esteem and confidence really exploded was, you know, these kids who were, you know, calling me these names and talking trash about me and things like that. Or when I see you on the football field, I'm definitely not going to forget that. And that's where it kind of grew.
Right.
You know, and part of that, you know, as my confidence continued to grow, I was actually halfway decent in football. You know, I was getting awards. You know, I was getting special recognition. You know, when I got to high school and things like that, you know, you start getting letters from colleges, interest letters, coaches start to come see you and things like that. So, you know, if anything, that's where, you know, my head really blew up, you know, where I'm actually really good at this. So, you know, for me, football was, you know, that's how I built my confidence. That's how I formed myself as a quote-unquote, I used to bully the bullies because, you know, most of our, you know, the quote-unquote bullies in school, they played football or some type of sport. Well, if you played football and you talk trash about me or tried to joke on me, I was going to do everything in my power to make sure you never crack another joke on me or ever call me another fat joke when we played football. I would spend the whole practice trying to get at you. And, you know, that's where it really kind of blew up.
Light 'em up.
Kind of what, definitely. And, you know, as I got through college and things like that, you know, I started to realize that I needed to form an identity outside of football, but I was so consumed in it, I never gave it a thought. You know, I never thought about, you know, well, what am I going to be after football? You know, for that many years, football was everything I knew. That was my confidence. That was my self-esteem. That was, you know, who I was. So, you know, that's where it kind of started at. And, you know, was it obsessive? Absolutely. You know, I would tell anybody, you know, I was completely obsessed with football, you know, beyond obsessed. You know, I didn't really play a lot of other sports growing up. I did track and field when I was in high school and stuff like that. But if it wasn't football season, I was getting ready for the next football season. So, yeah, that's kind of where my attachment and obsession with football started to grow at a very early age. You know, like Jared was saying, with bullying and say that again.
What's the looking back in retrospect? You all are sure enough grown now. Y'all real grown now. When you look back in retrospect at the, you know, from 7 to 30 somethings, what Jared, did I just age you?
You aged both of us.
I'm like, wait, Jared's not in 30 yet. But when you look back in retrospect over, you know, from Jared, you at 7, Ronnie, you at 8, and think about that progression to the men that you are today, what, you know, throw a couple of 2-3 points out there that could be beneficial in helping these athletes that are, because we already know, right? It's a given. There are thousands of athletes all over this country that are, each of you, their name is just different. So what advice can you give them? And then, you know, we can go on into exploring what else they can be doing besides football.
Right. Yeah, I think it's something that is very difficult to do as a child. You're talking about a 10-year-old, 11-year-old. I think it's very difficult for them to do on their own as far as trying to break out of that identity. I think that it really is a group effort. And I think that can start with the coach. Those are the guys that you're around on a daily basis when it comes to football. And your parents or your guardians, whoever you live with. I think it needs to start there because they have wisdom. They can see beyond football. They can see beyond, the field and beyond making it to the NFL or going to play Division I. So they see all the other opportunities out there. Whether they're doing them or not, they're aware of them more than a 10-year-old is. So I think that it starts at home, honestly, on exposing the children to other avenues of release from whatever it is. Like Ronnie just mentioned, with identity, his release of, I'm pretty sure you were angry in school. I'm pretty sure you were mad in school, correct, when you was getting bullied?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that anger that you built up, your release was football, and that became your identity. But we have to allow the children to have other releases that can give them the same fulfillment, because what are you going to do when you're 25 and you're not playing anymore and somebody's bullying you? You can't go put the pads on and do the Oklahoma drill. That's not going to happen. So I think that's where a lot of people don't know how to channel their aggression and their emotions, and that leads to a lot of violent activity, whether it's fighting, like Dr. Pitt said, or maybe somebody pulls a gun on somebody. And that all comes from years of having your identity in the sport, and your identity in that sport is how you release your emotions that you feel on a daily basis. So I think that's where it needs to start. And another thing about identity I wanted to bring up was it feels good having your identity wrapped in football because, like you said, if you're from an impoverished community, everyone knows, and they always say, oh, he plays football, he plays basketball. So you take on that identity. Everyone puts that identity on you, and it protects you throughout life. But then once you're done playing, you can get thrown back in the fire, and, your life can be at danger. So I think it definitely starts at home, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's good, Jared.
Definitely, Jared. I would.
Go ahead, Ron.
I would agree 1,000% with that. It definitely starts at home. And to touch on the point that you were talking about, Jared, asking, was I angry or upset, when I was being bullied and things like that. Absolutely, I was angry. I was upset. I wanted to do something. Of course, the easiest option was to just beat them up and things like that. But then, you face getting in trouble in school, getting suspended and things like that. I was more fearful of getting in trouble by my parents than I was at school. So, but what I realized, and, part of the struggle I had after playing football was, that release of that anger, that frustration. Football was my coping skill. We always talk about coping skills and having coping skills for different, mental illnesses and things like that. Well, my coping skill was football. No matter what was going on in my life, whether I was angry, upset, had relationship issues, family issues, no matter what the case may be, when I stepped on that football field, that was my coping skill. That was my release. That was my escape from all of that. And so when I finished playing football, one of the things I struggled with was having that release. I didn't have a release. So when I would get frustrated, with friends, family, my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, when I would get frustrated by those things, I had nowhere to release that anger and that energy. I used to explode on a lot of people. I would just spaz on people, who didn't necessarily deserve it, or, it wasn't meant to be, directed towards them. But, you know how it is when you have things boiling inside you and somebody comes along and says something or asks you something, and you're just triggered. So you just unleash on them. And, that was something that I fell victim to. So like Jared was saying, it's kind of hard for somebody who's in, elementary school or middle school to start to think about their identity after sports. At that age, you're still developing, things such as your decision-making skills. You're going through puberty, so you're going through hormonal changes. You're going through a lot of things during that period. And for me, my identity was always that football. Football got me through all those transition stages. It got me through puberty. It got me through, dealing with high school relationships and things like that. Now as and what Jared was touching on, having your parents, being able to see that for you after football. My dad used to always preach to me about having a 5-year plan. What's your 5-year plan? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? And when you're in high school and things like that, you listen, but you don't listen. Ain't nobody thinking about that right now. Anybody think about life after football? I mean, that's far from now. But in reality,
you talking about years from now, I'm playing football forever.
So those things, having those conversations with my parents and people who are older than me, they always said, well, what you gonna do after football? And like I said last week, I had a career plan for after football. That was to be a counselor and things like that. But I never really gave it too much thought. And that's one thing. If I would, give a suggestion to young student athletes is, to start to think about that. The earlier, the better. Even if it's when you become a freshman in college, start to have that plan. Football is not going to last forever, whether you're at the D1 level or the D3 level. That's not going to last forever. You if you're lucky enough, you might play football until you're 27, 28 years old if you go professional, whether that's in the NFL, the CFL, or one of the other smaller leagues. That's being blessed, to be able to play football that long after college. But that's not for everybody. So what is going to be your plan? Are you going to have an avenue to release that anger, that frustration, those things that you kind of put behind you when you walk onto the football field or basketball court or softball field or whatever the case may be? Having that idea start to creep into your mind of what you're going to do. And, also having that support system. I had a good support system, and like I said earlier, I isolated myself from that support system because I felt I didn't want to be that burden or put my frustrations and worries onto them. And in retrospect, that was the wrong thing to do. I should have reached out to them more. I should have leaned on my support system more to get me through that and guide me through that, so I know it would be okay.
I got
that would probably be some.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Look, y'all know
Go ahead.
The whole time you're talking is provoking my thoughts, and I'm like, I wonder.
Right.
Look, and it's rhetorical. I wonder if the reason why Tom Brady and Drew Brees won't sit down is because they're having an identity crisis. But that's rhetorical. Just was wondering.
That's a great.
Look, because didn't he say
you might be onto something.
I'm crazy. Okay, bro. I said, I need folk to remind him when they play, when he plays the Saints tomorrow. I said, can you remind him he's 46? Please remind me. Please remind me. Just saying. Just please remind me. Let's say, folks, we want you. We got about 33 minutes left. We're going, we're going to finish up in a little few minutes, and we still want to hear from you. We want you to join the conversation. 515-605-9744. That's 515-605-9744. We want to know what you think about this information that you're sharing. We're sharing. We want to know what's going on in your student athlete lives and your professional athlete lives and the family members that, okay, it's football season. Some of the schools are playing, some of them are not. What does that look like? What does that feel like? How is it impacting you? We want to hear about it. So you can also email us at htpregame@gmail.com. So what happens? When you look at all this identity theft that's going on among those of you that are former scholar athletes or former professional athletes or current student athletes that are pulling their hair out because they're not able to play this season and their entire season is either postponed, canceled, or a question mark. You all were telling me something about a Master P plan, and I hadn't heard about it. So what are the other opportunities? How do these student athletes diversify themselves so that they are not consumed and literally ready to lose their mind and do something drastic when they can't play anymore?
Yeah, that Master P plan, for anybody who hasn't watched the Master P documentary, I definitely recommend it, just to say that. And then especially as an athlete, you really see that, like his record label, No Limit, there's really no limits to what you can do. And I say this all the time for young athletes and leading into the other ways that you can diversify yourself and explore other opportunities. You have to really think about a 10-year-old who's able to dissect an entire football playbook and go out there on game day and execute it like to perfection. The type of mental fortitude that takes is an exceptional amount. So just imagine if they put that same mental strength and mental ability towards other avenues, they will be able to go so much further and probably do even greater than what they perform on the football field. And I
like
think taking the time out to just really diversify yourself, like we said, take chances, take risks. I mean, we're talking about young kids here who have so much life ahead of them. I mean, even if you're in your 20s, I mean, life, there's so many chances for us to take risks and learn, realize that this is what we want to do, and then we realize this is what we don't want to do. I mean, just little things as far as signing up for drum lessons. There's so many camps, there's so many trainers that we go to that parents pay money for on a daily basis. And just imagine if you take one day away from the field and you put one day into a drum class. You never know. Your child may really love the drums. He may go on to be a famous drummer. He may be go on to be able to provide income through music. But you would never know that if you don't open up that door for them to step into. I mean, it's so many things from cooking. If they draw, expose that. Like, open up that door some more. Find out other avenues that they can go into to learn about it. Find a mentor, somebody who is in a field that they show interest in. They can show them the reality of it. Then from there, they can find out if that's really what they want to do or not. I just think it comes down to taking risks, calculated risks, and really opening our young student athletes' eyes, on a daily basis. And like I said earlier, it starts at the home. And another thing, we have technology is so prominent right now. These young kids can go on YouTube for an hour a day and learn a new skill, literally. They can learn a new skill over time, and in a month they can have so much knowledge on it that they can, in today's time, they can profit from that at a young age and, go into other career fields that they want. So that's my take on it. I think we just have to stop pigeonholing our athletes and saying, okay, we're going to give football 15 years, and then whatever happens then, we're going to pivot and try another route. That's my take on it.
Yeah. All right. We have a caller. So let's see.
All right.
Yeah. So caller 7921, welcome to House Talk. You're on the air. What's your comment or question, please?
Thank you. Yes, I agree about the whole student-athlete identity, and parents vicariously live through their children with pushing them into sports.
Amen.
Because you have some parents who may have never played a sport, so they push their child, especially the sons, into football to play that sport. And sometimes the child may not even want to play football, but they're forced to play football.
Yes.
Because the parent is pushing them. And, a lot of times that's all they think about is that sport. And then because they're so busy trying to please the parents and not even opening up to the parent about, this is something that I don't want to do. And I agree with opening up other avenues for your child to see what else they may be interested in. And that child is afraid to speak up because the parent's pushing them to play that sport, and they really don't want to. So a lot of times what happens doesn't make it to that D1 college or the NFL. Then that's when the student has that breakdown, and they're clashing with the parent. Well, you forced me to do this, and this is not what I really wanted to do. Now look what happened.
Right.
So how is that handled? And then the student has nothing else to look forward to. They don't have another skill. Right. They haven't learned anything else. but being that student athlete. So now they go into some kind of state of depression or something happens. Right. And, you know, and then there's that whole parent-child disconnect. So how is that handled?
Wow, caller, thank you for that. That is such a powerful, powerful truth. And part of, you know, just in quick response to your ending question, part of how that gets handled is they end up in my office or they end up in Ronnie's office seeking mental health treatment because they just don't know themselves. And then as Jared alluded to, sometimes it starts to come out in all these inappropriate behaviors, whether it's fighting or oppositional and defiant behaviors and all of these other things. And you nailed it. You hit the nail on the head in that, you know, to you and Jared's point, parents have to be willing to allow their children to be authentically who they are and understand that the pressure that they're putting on their children could end up being to the child's detriment. And is that really how you want to handle your kids? You know, I can tell you that as a family therapist, so oftentimes, you know, I get the horror stories. I hear the horror stories. And it's unfortunate and it's sad and it's so tragic. So caller, we thank you for calling in. And certainly, look, if you have any of those parents in your network, okay, please encourage them to listen in because we're going to be tackling those very issues that you brought to the forefront. Thank you so much for calling in today.
Oh, sure. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Wow. She nailed that thing.
Oh, yeah,
she made a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Like I just real quick, like with my dad, and this is when I was probably about 21, maybe 22 at the time, and I was sitting in the car with him and my stepmother, and they were in the front, I was in the back, and they literally got in an argument right in front of me over football, and she was trying to tell him, like, how do you know this is what he really wants to do? And I love my dad, you know what I'm saying? I love him at the end of the day. But like we said, we're being transparent and raw, so we have to give the real to, you know, results. But he was so just stuck on, no, he's doing this, he's playing football. And I'm not 5 years old, like I can speak for myself. And he was just very adamant on it. They got in an argument. And I can just imagine there's so many other kids that go through that, and that identity, you know, that they find through football is how they receive what they feel is unconditional love from their parents. In some situations, it may not be unconditional love. It may be just because, you know, if they're living vicariously through you, they see you as a ticket. And that's just, you know, very sad, you know, very, very sad thing.
It's tragic.
It is. And just to piggyback off of that real quick, it reminds me of, you know, when, you know, it's almost like, you know, the parent is having an identity crisis. You know, they're still struggling to find their identity after playing. You know, if you are a parent who, you know, you played a sport, and whether it's high school or college, and you have a son or a daughter, and you try and live vicariously through them, part of the thing that also affects those children is their ability to make decisions for themselves. A famous example of this would be LeVar Ball. And, you know, God bless LeVar Ball. You know, I appreciate what he's doing, you know, as an African-American male, having 3 sons who are all very successful, having one who's already in the NBA, having one who works through his company, and then the younger one who's getting ready to be drafted this year. However, you know, I know they've been very successful from an early age, and, you know, LeVar has kind of been that motivating force for them where he's, you know, trained them. You know, he's very proud of how he's trained his sons and, you know, things like that. But one of the things I always wonder about is, you know, in kind of Lonzo Ball kind of started doing that, you know, within the last year, started making decisions for himself because, you know, oftentimes the parent doesn't make the best decision for the kid, you know. Granted, you know, in LeVar's mind, he probably thinks that he's doing a good job and things like that for his kids, but you're robbing your sons of developing that decision making and working through decisions if it doesn't go your way at an early age. So, you know, God forbid, when LeVar Ball's not here anymore, what is his son's going to do? Are they going to be able to think for themselves and think, make quick decisions and things like that by themselves? You rob kids of that. You rob the kids of their confidence from making decisions like that by themselves. And, like you were saying, it's very sad to see parents like that to try and, rule their kids' life and make decisions for them, whether that's transferring the kid to another team, or I want the coach fired because I don't like how the coach talks to my son or treat my daughter and things like that. Kids have to work, part of sports is adversity, working through that adversity. And when you rob the kid of being able to work through that adversity on themselves, that also has lasting effects past their sport, because we all go through some form of adversity in life, no matter how small or large it is. And if you've never had to make those decisions before, that's very rough, and that can really stunt or alter your growth.
Right. Yeah, I had a kid I played against in basketball. His parents held him back just for basketball. I was like, I can't believe it.
Wow.
Yeah. Held him back for that.
Do that.
Yep.
Wait. When you say they held him back because of basketball, what do you mean?
He's supposed to be in 8th grade. They came in 7th grade for basketball, and he didn't even make it, and he didn't even play college sports. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And,
but aren't there or do the age requirements not apply in elementary school?
I don't know. I know
age.
It
honestly depends on the state and the league you're in. I mean, well, of course, you can't be, a certain age with certain kids,
you can't
but
be like 15 in 7th grade playing with elementary school kids, but
exactly. And oftentimes, what a lot of parents will do, and you see this a lot in AAU basketball, and now starting with high school football. If your birthday is like, I think the cutoff for most schools is like, the beginning of September for when you can start that grade. Like if you're born in October or November, you have to wait the following year.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, but if you're not part of that exception and you start school, on time, oftentimes parents will, let their kid hang back to try and get an extra year of experience. Like if they feel like their kid is going to go D1 or go to a big school or something like that, they'll make the decision for the kid and hold them back to try and get that extra year to get more film and get more, bring their grades up and things like that. And that has been on the rise a lot within AAU sports over the last 5 to 10 years.
Wow. That's crazy to me. I mean, the thought of moving wow. Okay, you know what? We'll revisit that on a later show, because all I can say right now is wow, just wow. Okay. So
yeah, I think. No, go ahead, Dr. Pitts.
No, I'm just in my thoughts. You go right ahead.
I think that also I think society plays a role in that as well, because how society sees our athletes, that's a lot of times that's how the parent or guardian will see them or want to see them. And the most famous thing, I can't remember if we hit on this last week or not, but it was when LeBron James was told to shut up and dribble. That right there, by the CNN report, that right there says it all. That society looks at African American males, predominantly African American males, because the male sports are in the spotlight more than the WNBA. But even a lot of females are looked at in that perception as well. But that just shows that's what they expect from you. If you're going to reach any type of success in the United States, it's going to be involved in some type of sport, entertainment, as far as rapping or anything like that. And what do you guys think about society's perception of the athlete? And do you think that they may play an even larger role in forming that identity than some parents or guardians may have?
I think societal pressure is insane. And your point about the report that I'm just going to believe that ignorant behind reporter that said LeBron just needs to shut up and dribble. I think that speaks to the culture that exists among some members of the dominant culture in this country. Certainly, we know that that's not how everybody sees it. But the mere fact that she felt so comfortable making such an ignorant statement like that is just appalling to me. It makes me wonder, with such a difficult climate that we're living in now, with so much racial tension, if that's what's in the mindset. If that's what's in the not even in the recesses of people's mind, but in the forefront of some people's mind now. Oh dear, did they really have the audacity to stand and lock arms during the the Black National Anthem? Where I felt in all of my bone marrow on Thursday that there were folk in this country that were losing their mind, because you know what, they just need to play. It's okay. It's okay. We're supposed to shut up and score points, and they just need to shut up. But doesn't that speak to the marginalization and the disenfranchisement, the social justice and the inequality that we as people of color have faced in this country for countless generations? It's, to me, and y'all know how I am, again, that mindset, that magnitude of ignorance to me feels very much like slavery. Just shut up.
Absolutely.
Just shut up and do whatever. It's seen and not heard. Do as I say. With the audacity that suggests, how dare we have a voice? How dare we speak up and speak out? So when I look around and I see, the signs that say we will not be silent, we will not sit down and be quiet, my heart just leaps out of my chest, because you're not going to silence us. You're not. There has to be accountability, and particularly where our athletes are concerned. I think society, and I love our country, God knows I do, but we're an arrogant nation. We are such an arrogant nation, and there are people in this country that think that they can just tell us to shut up and throw the ball, shut up and dribble, shut up and hit the ball. Just shut up. Just shut up.
It's crazy. There was I don't know if you guys are familiar with. I know Ronnie's familiar with Rashawn Mendenhall. I know you probably are, Dr. Fitz.
Oh, yeah.
Former Steelers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he retired early in his 20s. I think he was 27, 26 around there. And it was an article they were talking about him saying, he's going to end up broke, basically because he's not playing football. Or they say he's going to end up running back to the NFL because he's not going to know what to do. And the crazy thing is he's actually one of the writers for the HBO series Ballers that The Rock is on. He's one of the writers for it. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
It's like, who would have thought, this guy is one of the writers for HBO when all society looked at him as a football player. And he had opened up about it a little bit, how, he didn't appreciate them saying that, and how he just felt like that's what they always do. They try to pigeonhole the African-American athlete into not exploring what they have to offer. And, I mean, he could go on to write a hit series and be far more successful than his, 5 or 6 years that he played in the NFL.
Isn't that the truth?
Exactly.
Ooh, to that point, so my cousin was telling me last night, we were talking about Patrick Mahomes and that beauty of a contract that he just signed. But he was saying that I don't know if it was on ESPN or where he heard it, but one of the things that he did was invest in the baseball team. So he's part owner of the baseball team out there or something like that. Did you all hear anything about that?
He's one of the minority owners of the Kansas City Royals.
So talk about a sound business mind. But to your point, Jared, is that, society, like you said, society pigeonholes our athletes and acts as if, this is your identity. You play football, you play basketball, you play baseball, you run track, you swim, you do this, and we're going to put you in this box, and that's all you do, and you leave the business to us. And that's one of the things. That's one of the things that I love about Heritage Sports Radio Network and this, wonderful union that we have with them now is because their focus on the family initiatives and the work that needs to be done to get us more in the forefront in the corporate arena, more in the forefront in the boardroom, more in the forefront as the CEOs and the CFOs and the COOs rather than the lower level positions all the time. It speaks to that willingness of so many people within our society that are totally okay with us being restricted to whatever your respective athletic responsibility is.
Right. And then another topic, this just happened about 2 days ago maybe, but DeAndre Hopkins basically restructured his contract on his own, and with the hope of becoming a general manager in the NFL based off of some in that contract. So, and that's big news, and it just goes to show that it's not normal, because anything like that happens, like with Patrick Mahomes, it's not normal, so it's a lot of attention. So I think once, as athletes, as people, as society, we just have to normalize these things.
Yeah.
And then, you look at the owner of the Redskins, or the president, I believe, of the Redskins, the African-American young guy.
Oh, yeah.
General manager.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. That's just showing more possibilities. Like, look, if you can't make it to the NFL, you could still be in the NFL, but just outside of the pack and still get that same enjoyment out of it.
Outside of that traditional pathway. And we touched on that last week. There's, as my grandpa used to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You don't lock yourself into, I got to go pro, because there's so many other ways that you can still be involved in the league that, look, that don't tear your body up.
Right.
Exactly. And something I wanted to touch on real quick as far as society's perception of student athletes, especially African-American student athletes. Something else that, kind of goes into that is attention and getting that attention. Attention can be a very addictive drug. When you get that attention at an early age, if you're a very skilled and talented player, oftentimes, that's the only thing they focus on, like we were saying, as far as the lady from CNN telling LeBron to just shut up and dribble. LeBron is very talented outside of sports and things like that. But, part of the thing that, and kind of the dream that is sold to student athletes at a young age, is the attention you receive. You get all this attention for your athletic abilities, and then as soon as your athletic career is over with, that attention is gone. But what if you're skilled at something else other than sports? What if you have a skill set that, like Jared was saying, as far as like drawing or writing or, being very creative, having those talents, having a business mind outside of sports, oftentimes that gets pushed to the side because that doesn't sell. That's not hot news or anything like that. That's nothing worth grabbing attention for, but if you go out here and score 5 touchdowns and break the state record or break the conference record for touchdowns or rushing yards and things like that, you got everybody's attention. And some things I wanted to read off to our listeners, for those of you who are, whether you're a former or current student athlete, and you feel like, the skills you possess the sports skills you possess don't transfer over to the business world or the career world or anything like that, I want to read off some of these things. And if you identify with any of these, then they are definitely transferable skills. If you feel like you're a fierce competitor, a determined individual, if you feel like you're high achieving, if you like being challenged, if you have the ability to overcome personal obstacles, if you are mentally strong, if you are devoted, resilient, if you like working towards goals, if you enjoy pushing yourself to the limits, if you value being a part of something bigger than yourself, if you're a team player, if you like motivating others, and most importantly, if you are a leader, all those are skills that are taught, in whatever sports you play, but those are skills that can be transferred to anything you want to do in life, whether it's having a business, getting your education, furthering your education past a bachelor's degree, working in the entertainment world or working in the business world. All those skills can be transferred from your sport into the real world. So if you feel like you identify with any of those skills, use that, find value in yourself outside of the sport you play. Everybody contains some form of value or some amount of value. You just have to find it and hone it to something that you enjoy, first of all, because it's kind of hard to do anything without having passion with it. So, that same passion you have for your sport, find something that makes you happy. When you find something that makes you happy, of course the money will come and things like that. And a lot of times people are driven by, well, how much money can I make, or will I get notoriety for this, or, what's the paycheck attached to it? Right. If you're money chasing and things like that, but you're miserable, you're not using your skills to the best of your ability. So, for those of you who think that, well, I'm highly skilled in football, basketball, baseball, whatever the case may be, but you're not skilled in the real world, that's not the case. You can take those skills from your sport and put them in the real world.
Right. I want to add to that too, as we're wrapping up, gentlemen, because as someone who wears multiple hats, you all know that I'm also an educator and serving as an adjunct professor now. We can't put enough emphasis on education. And I really, truly do believe that society plays a part in that too. It's like there's so much emphasis on the athletic ability. Have people just totally forgotten the importance of a sound education? Because as you said, Ronnie, you're not going to play football forever. And when you as you both are now in amazing careers, you had the skill set, you had the educational foundation to be able to make that transition smoothly. And I think that society could do a much better job of emphasizing the importance of a stellar education and not just doing enough just to get by, to stay on the field or the court or in the pool or whatever sport it is, right? We have to recognize, embrace, and fully understand that knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And when we gain that knowledge and we have those transferable skills after the athletic career has completed, then what? And that's what today's show was all about. The then what? What are you going to do with your life after your athletic career concludes? We want to leave you with that. We want you to allow that to marinate, because it is an important question that you must be able to answer. We also want to reiterate that if you are having depressive symptoms, or you just know for a fact that you are battling depression, we want you to get help. If you're thinking about suicide, if you are worried about someone else or just need emotional support, please, please, please contact the Emergency Lifeline Network 24/7. You can call them at 1-800-273-8255. Again, that's 1-800-273-8255. You can also reach us if you go online to drlaurendpitts.com. You can reach us via email. You can email us. You can email us at htpregame@gmail.com. You can email us at info@drlaurendpitts.com. You can give us a call. We are here for you. We want you to join these conversations. We want you to be a part of the transformation and the transition that we are purposefully, deliberately, and intentionally bringing to our HBCU families, to our communities, to our student athletes, to our professional athletes. Join us next week on House Talk Pregame with Dr. Lauren Pitts. See you next week.